he's excited. He's been fighting like crazy to get back on the field, and to have him back with the team is, he's back in his comfort zone. So it's really good to have him back.
After missing the last 2 games due to a concussion, quarterback E.J. Warner is back in uniform this week.
Warner and the Owls are fresh off a bye week, and the Navy midshipmen await them.
I'm Sam Cavone, live from Edberg Olson Hall. A few weeks ago, the world celebrated World Mental Health Day. I got to talk to Dr. Stephanie Coakley about how student athletes at Temple can manage their mental health during the toughest times.
I'm Hayden Vandell, live from the studio set. Later in the show, I'll update you on who is still undefeated and who is still winless in AAC play when we go around the American. Inside the Nest is live and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome to this Halloween edition of Inside the Nest. I'm Meg Doyle and he's Jake Gable.
E.J. Warner's Halloween costume, full pads and a uniform. The star QB is back after 2 weeks where the offense really struggled.
Now that E.J. Warner is back in at QB, let's compare the stats on his past performance to Quincy Patterson and Forrest Brock, who filled in. Warner averages about 45 pass attempts with 290 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns per game. Patterson and Brock averaged about 30 pass attempts with only 106 passing yards per game, along with no pass touchdowns in the 2 weeks Warner was gone. Expect a totally different game plan this coming weekend than the one we've seen in the 2 prior games. Warner will test the Navy midshipmen. It's time to roll the tape. Navy had a tough game against Air Force with only 22 rushing yards and 102 passing. Freshman Braxton Woodson was in QB position for Navy after Ty Levitine was injured in the previous game. Levitine did come back in the 4th quarter to save Navy from a shutout with a 10-yard passing touchdown. Navy may have lost 17-6, but the defense can be credited for stopping an Air Force team that has reached 30 points in 5 of its 7 games.
I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise that 2 schools that are part of the national defense got into a defensive battle. Navy's offense just couldn't get going against 17th ranked Air Force, losing 17-6. Air Force QB Zach Larrier only completed 4 passes, but still ended up with 151 passing yards. Navy's lone score was a 10-yard touchdown pass from Ty Levitine.
Now, Navy had a pretty low-scoring loss against Air Force, but how do you think Navy's going to match up against Temple?
Well, the thing that Navy is famous for is that triple option offense. Now, under new head coach Brian Newberry, who came in this year, the Navy is throwing the ball just a little bit more this year. They were throwing the ball for about 84 yards per game last year. They're adding 15 more yards per game. Just under 100 yards per game. Still not a lot, but it adds a little bit more of that passing threat to the triple option offense.
It may not be a lot, but that definitely is improvement, and that's improvement we have not seen with Temple in regards to their run game. Now, when it comes to Navy's run game, they have a very strong run game. They're ranked 15th in the country. They're averaging 205 yards per game. Now, the Owls are ranked 124 in rushing defense, so I think this is going to be a really challenging game for the defense specifically because they're just not performing where they need to be, especially when it comes to the run game. Now, one thing that may work in Temple's favor is that Navy is still unsure who's going to be in their quarterback position. Now, we just saw in that past game, Braxton Woodson, he started. He only had 6 offensive yards for 3 quarters. They brought in Ty Levitine, and he ended up having 96 offensive yards for the last quarter. So if he starts, I think that's going to present a challenge for Temple.
Yeah, and that who's going to be under center, that quarterback, who's going to be. Temple's had to deal with that already this year. Twice, Tulsa didn't know who was going to start. UTSA didn't know who was going to start until they trotted on out to the field. And not only that being a challenge for Temple, but the turnover margin, that's really going to be a big issue. Temple is 3rd worst in the entire country when it comes to turnover margin and last in the conference. Meanwhile, Navy is best in the conference and 6th in the entire nation. So you know that the midshipmen are capable of forcing turnovers. So the Owls are really going to have to be on their best game in protecting the ball and also trying to force some balls out and maybe get an interception or two.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of some not too great stats, Navy allows 22 points per game, while the Owls are allowing 38. It's pretty clear who has the better defense, and like I said earlier, it's just going to be a challenging game all around.
Yeah, but we did a little bit of spying on Navy and got some insider info. Joe Miller, the team's radio color commentator, has been covering Navy since 2008 and has been a part of the broadcast team since 2015.
Miller talked to us about some of the strengths and weaknesses of the midshipmen as we go behind enemy lines.
I think the most obvious when you come to Navy, when you talk about the offensive side of the football field, is running the football. Alex Teska has emerged as probably their top running back so far this season. So he's been a huge strength for them offensively so far this season. I would also say on the defensive side of the football field, you look at the strength of this team. They've had some injuries along the defensive side of the football field on the defensive line, but I would think as a group, the linebacking core has been really solid for them over the last few weeks. And I would say really over the last 2-3 games, their biggest strength has been getting to the quarterback. They've been very aggressive and they've been able to, get in the backfield. Their sacks have really picked up as the season has gone along. So I think you would look at their linebacking core as the strength on the defensive side of the football field.
Coming into this matchup against Temple, is there any key players that you think the Owls need to watch out for from the midshipmen?
Well, yeah, like I said before, I think Alex Teska has had a really good season. Their running back, he's leading them in rushing, averaging about 75 yards a game. He's been fantastic for them recently. I think on the defensive side of the football, I mentioned Rayon Lane earlier. They have a couple linebackers, and Luke Pierce, who's a sophomore, who's really played well. He's gotten some more time as the season's progressed, and he's kind of like one of their ball hawks, one of their playmakers on the defensive side of the football field. He seems to always be around when they get a turnover. Will Harbor, their inside linebacker, also sort of similar type player as well. So there's obviously some talented guys on the defensive side of the football field that you have to watch out. But offensively, I think the first guy you key on with some of the instability at the quarterback position, some of the guy that you would key on is their fullback, Alex Teska.
All right, and our final question. So every week we give our score predictions for the game. So we wanted to know what your prediction is for this matchup.
Well, I'll have to go with the mids in this one. Like I said, I think defensively they've been playing really well. I know, Temple's obviously had some, back and forth with some injuries at the quarterback position. So you're kind of in the same boat with the quarterback position there. So I'm going to take the mids 27-10 in this one.
Now that we have our insider info from Joe, we have a better idea of what Temple needs to do and not to do against the midshipmen.
It's time for our blueprint for success, and the Owls need to navigate this matchup. Tool 1, make Navy throw. We already talked about how much Navy likes to run the ball, but the midshipmen have completed less than half of their passes this season. Stack the box on defense and make whoever is in at QB beat you with his arm. Tool 2, go for big plays. Navy sports the 4th best red zone defense in the country. Teams only convert 65% of their trips inside the 20. Stretch the field and try to score on some deep plays.
Tool number 3, expect the unexpected. Navy is known for its triple option offense. That means Temple defense needs to be on its toes and ready to make a quick decision and follow that assignment accordingly. And our final tool for today, an emphasis on protection for E.J. Warner. For the season, Navy has recorded 20 sacks for 132 yards. Navy's defense is aggressive, and with E.J. Warner coming off a concussion, the Owls' pass coverage is vital for this game. It's time for our first break of the day. Coach Stan Drayton had a week off from his weekly press conference, but the bye week is over, which means it's back to business as usual.
In just 90 seconds, we'll be hearing from Coach on how the Owls are preparing for this Navy matchup. Stick around. Welcome back. It wouldn't be Inside the Nest if we didn't hear from the man in charge of the Owls, Stan Drayton.
Let's take a listen to what Coach Drayton had to say about how the Owls recouped during the bye week.
You know, it doesn't look like he skipped a beat. It really doesn't. I mean, he came back in the game and, in the practice and was ready to go. The timing was still there, you know. The processing was still at a high level, you know, and, you know, he's excited. He's been fighting like crazy to get back on the field, and to have him back with the team is, you know, he's back in his comfort zone. So it's really good to have him back. I beat myself up. You know, we worked really hard, and, you know, we had some high expectations for ourselves, and, you know, we're excited about these next 4 opportunities, though, and, you know, so I'm back in my routine of trying to get some sleep, trying to eat, you know, try to throw a little exercise in there in between. You know, I'm better for the kids when I'm, you know, doing those things, you know, so I had to find a way to force myself to do those things so I can be better for the kids. And, you know, I think it was a good bye week for myself as well. You know, I think our coaches needed to decompress a little bit and kind of reflect and self-scout ourselves to some degree and just figure out what we can do better moving forward. So we're excited about the opportunity this week for sure.
You know, Jake, it's really reassuring to hear that Stan said when EJ came back in for practice, he did not skip a beat. He was ready to go. I really think that shows who EJ is as an athlete and just as a person in general. Not only that, but they have a tough matchup against Navy, and I think they're really going to need EJ for this. Now, Stan also mentioned how the bye week was nice not only for the athletes, but for the coaching staff as a whole. Stan talked about how he beats himself up a lot, and it's been a pretty tough season for the Owls, so it's nice to know that everyone got a break.
Yeah, and it's really just interesting to hear that perspective from Stan about how he needed the break. He needed the bye week. We always hear, oh, the players need to rest up, and of course that's true, but coaches need that too. They're doing just as much. It's just more mental than physical, and I think that's a good lesson for everyone, not just football players, not just football coaches, but take that time, make sure you're right, so then the work that you do, the work that you put in is also going to be good as well.
You're absolutely right. It is now time for part 2 of Stan Drayton's presser.
Yeah, we needed it both physically and mentally. You know, came late during the course of the season, obviously, but it was well needed. You know, got some guys feeling better. You know, some of the nicks and the bangs got cleaned up on some guys who were already available to us. Yeah, I think the offense, it's no question. You know, the offense operates better when he's at that position for us, at the quarterback position for us, and. You know, I know J.O. is extremely excited, you know, to have him back. Yeah, EJ's back, you know. But, you know, no, I think it was something that our team was anticipating. You know, I think behind closed doors we anticipated the bye week being the time that we would get him back. They do bring a lot of pressure, you know, so the fronts are constantly moving, and it's coming from outside, it's coming from inside. And, you know, you got to be really sharp and up on your game. And not only does the quarterback have to be sharp, the receivers have to have some kind of awareness that that's going on as well. The backs have to be really good in that respect. You know, so yeah, they're not a easy defense schematically by any stretch. They're very complicated, and they do a good job over there. They really do.
Temple desperately needed that bye, like we've mentioned, but I just wonder what would have happened if that bye came earlier in the season, because it's already so late into the season and it just came for them now. Would the last couple of games been good if they had that extra week of practice in the middle of the season or earlier in the season? And then that Navy defense, boy, is that no joke. They've held an opponent's to a combined 41 points in the last 3 games. Meanwhile, Temple gave up 55 points last game alone. And in Temple's last 4 games, they've given up more points than Navy has all season.
That's crazy. I mean, Stan said it himself. Navy brings on the pressure, and we need awareness from the receivers on Temple's end. Now, the one good thing for Temple, Stan talked about how some of the players who have been injured the past few weeks, they may be making a reappearance in this Navy game, and I honestly think there is no better time. Everyone had the bye week to recoup, to get themselves together, to heal from some injuries, and Temple is trying to secure their first conference win. So Hopefully, those players coming back will make a big impact for the Owls.
And speaking of coming back, we're going to come back soon after another break. When we're back, we're going no huddle.
Grab some Halloween candy, but you have to be quick. ITN will be back in 90 seconds. Welcome back. Jake and I are standing up, which means it's time to go no huddle.
3 questions, 2 minutes. Let's get it started.
All right, question number 1. Temple is 6-4 and the last 10 games off a bye week. Will this bye week have any impact on their play this week?
I'm going to say yes, but a positive impact. Temple has needed this bye week a lot. We've mentioned that earlier in the show. I think that this is just the perfect time for them to get more practice in, understand what they're doing on their assignments, and shake off that early season rust and get a fresh new start.
I love your optimism, but I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, it was great for some of the injured players to come back and recover, but this season the Owls have just had a lot of fundamental issues that I don't think can miraculously change in just 1 week, so I think it's still going to be really tough for the Owls.
All right, question 2. With E.J. Warner coming off of a concussion, will he be 100% for this Navy game?
I think yes, 100% healthy. Of course, they wouldn't play him if he was still showing concussion symptoms. But as far as being rusty, I mean, he hasn't seen the field in 3 weeks. Game day situations are different, so I think it's still going to be a little tough for him.
Yeah, I think he'll be 100% healthy. I don't think it's going to affect his decision making at all, but I agree with you on the rust. I think the first quarter might be a little shaky, maybe a little inaccurate on throws, but I think he'll be able to work through it and get back to himself by the end of the game.
All right, our final question for today. Navy's offense has a pretty unique triple option. Can the Owls stop the run game?
I have a little bit of faith, but emphasis on the little part of the faith, because Navy's offense is only averaging 18 points per game, which isn't a lot, but they're so run heavy, and that's what the Owls really struggle with, stopping the run. So while this isn't the toughest matchup, Navy's strengths do play to Temple's weaknesses.
Jake, I love your optimism once again, but I just don't see it happening. I mean, Temple's rush defense is ranked 13th in the AAC. The pass defense is ranked 11th in the AAC. I don't think it matters what play Navy does. I don't think Temple defense can stop it. Week 9 plus 1 bye week equals 8 score predictions for the ITN crew. Hayden and Jake are still leading with a perfect record, while Sam and I are 1 correct prediction short. Now, earlier in Behind Enemy Lines, we heard Joe Miller's score prediction. He has Navy winning 27-10. Let's see if the rest of the crew agrees. My wish was finally granted. I get to start off score predictions this week. I do not see Temple getting its first conference win and have Navy winning 24-10. Between Navy's strong run game, Temple's weak defensive performance, and not to mention the midshipmen's triple options offense, I do not see Temple getting the win. Sam, what's it going to be this week?
Well, Meg, we are on the same page yet again. I have the midshipmen sailing out of the link with the W, 26-7. With Navy running the ball most of the time and Temple's defense not playing their part as of late, I do not think that Temple will be able to stop the run, leading to less opportunities for the Owls to redeem themselves from their 5-game losing streak. Hayden, what's on your mind?
Sam, I'm with you guys. I've got Navy winning 25-18. We mentioned it. Navy is averaging 205 rushing yards per game. Good for best in the American. And as we mentioned, Temple's defense cannot stop the run this year. Everett Withers' defense is giving up 206 rushing yards per game. Not only is that second worst in the conference, but it is the 6th most in all of FBS. Last year, Navy beat Temple without completing a pass in an overtime game. Jake, you and I were both at that road game last year against Navy. Who you got this year?
Well, I've got Navy 23-6, but you guys didn't really give me anything to talk about. You talked about the run offense and our defense, so I guess that's just it. Navy 23-6, but it's time for our next break of the day, our final break of the day, and we'll see a lot more of Sam and Hayden on the other side.
Stick around, ITN will be right back.
Welcome back. It might be Halloween, but one of the most haunting subjects that occurs in most college students' lives is their challenges with mental health and how to overcome them, with some help from Temple's athletic staff. Being a football player does not just include the glitz and glamour that comes with being in the spotlight. College football players may just be as lucky as the average student when it comes to facing mental health challenges, but very few, only 10%, seek out help.
You wouldn't walk around with a torn ACL. Like, nobody does that.
But mental health isn't often as visible. It's often viewed as a sign of weakness, especially coming from men who are always supposed to play the tough guy role.
Put themselves first. And I know that that sounds like something that somebody will push back on, but everybody's got mental health. And mental health doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. Actually, seeking mental health services are a sign of, I say, strength.
Resources for student athletes are available through TU Well. TU Well provides mental health, wellness, and performance enhancement services. Through these programs, athletes can receive medication, sleep aid, group therapy, and much more. As the season wraps up in the last few weeks, most mental health challenges will occur on and off the field. The Owls are encouraged to contact TU Well at any time of the day to receive help, no matter the circumstances. For any other student who may be struggling with their mental health, please contact Tuttleman Counseling Services for more information. That's all I have for this show. Meg and Jake, back to you on the desk.
Thanks, Sam. Temple and Navy may have been on a bye week, but the rest of the AAC had a busy week of matchups.
ITN beat reporter Hayden Bandel is live at the studio set to fill us in on what's new in the AAC. Hey, Hayden.
Hey, Jake. We know how bad Temple's loss was against SMU, and the Mustangs did it again, manhandling Tulsa 69-10. It's the first time in program history that they have scored 50-plus points in back-to-back conference games. UTSA topped East Carolina 41-27 to remain undefeated in conference play, keeping the Pirates winless in AAC games. Another 4-0 conference team is the Tulane Green Wave. They went on the road to hold off Rice 30-28 thanks to their final drive lasting over 8 minutes, shaving off all but the final 4 seconds of the game. For the first time this season, an AAC game featured two teams who both put up at least 40 points. Memphis, who was up as much as 24 in the first half over North Texas, squeezed out a 45-42 win.
Hey, Hayden, welcome to the desk. Tell us a little bit more about your standout game.
Yeah, so North Texas was down by 24 points to Memphis with less than 11 minutes left. They were down by 3 possessions and still managed to take the lead in the fourth quarter. Here's Damon Ward, who had a career-high 8 catches for 120 yards, also holding in that 34-yard reception. Then this touchdown gives the Green Wave their first lead of the game with just 47 seconds left, but it didn't last long. Seth Hennigan went down, drove 5 for 5, 75 yards, and a touchdown.
Now, just about a week ago, it was announced that Army is joining the AAC. What do you think they're going to bring to conference play?
They bring a lot of experience in American play. They've played tons of teams, UTSA, Navy, of course, in their annual game. They're 14-11 against American Conference teams since their head coach, Jeff Monaghan, took over. He is 66-55, and he has been 2-0 against Temple. They also beat UTSA this year for their only loss, and UTSA is undefeated, too.
Thank you, Hayden. But that's all the time we have for today's show. We'll see you next time for Inside the Nest. Keep up with us on social media at Owl Sports Update.
For all our show producers and ourselves, thanks for tuning in.